The night air in Idaho carried that sharp metallic cold that seeps through your coat and makes every breath sting. Neon from the gas station sign flickered over the cracked asphalt, buzzing like an insect that refused to die. I had a paper cup of burnt coffee in one hand and the other digging for my phone when I jogged back toward the SUV. The headlights glared, the engine idled, and for a second I thought they were just teasing me for taking too long. Then I pulled the handle. Locked. The window slid down halfway, and I saw Emily in the driver's seat, her sisters in the back. Lauren leaned forward, eyes gleaming. Chloe smirked like she'd just won a bet. Emily's lips curled into a grin I didn't recognize. Actually, she said, voice casual, like ordering dessert, "We think you need to stand on your own 2 feet." My brain stalled. What's that supposed to mean? "Open the door," Lauren chimed in. "You're always glued to Emily. It's exhausting," Chloe added. "Come on, Mark, live a little. Time for an adventure." I laughed, confused to sound too loud in the empty lot. "Very funny. Let's go, we're already behind schedule." Emily just pressed the gas. "Lighten up, Mark. It's just a prank. Figure it out." Then she floored it. Tires, squealing taillights burning red into the dark highway. The roar faded and I stood there clutching cheap coffee, holding my house keys, but no car, no ride, no marriage I could recognize. Just a few hours earlier, everything had looked normal enough. Seattle had been gray, that morning drizzle on the windshield as we packed for her cousin's wedding. I'd worked late the night before, finishing a sprint at Cascade Tech, double-checking commits, tying up tickets so the team wouldn't be stuck while I was gone. Emily handled the travel arrangements like she always did. Hotel booked in her name, SUV gassed up, itinerary written in her neat handwriting. She brushed off my suggestion to take my car. "Why waste the gas, Han? We'll all go together." Practical, sure, but the decision felt like another tiny piece of control, slipping from my hands. In the driveway, Lauren rolled her eyes at me, fussing with luggage. "You're too predictable, Mark. You'd pack an extra toothbrush if you could." Chloe snorted earbuds and muttering, "Mr. Boring strikes again." I swallowed it like always. 7 years of marriage had taught me that pushing back only turned small barbs into full-blown arguments. Emily smiled at them but didn't defend me. She just climbed into the driver's seat, started the playlist Lauren insisted on, and merged us onto I-90. For the first 100 miles, conversation bubbled in the back seat, giggles muffled like secrets. Every time I glanced over, Emily was catching Lauren's eye in the rearview mirror, exchanging some private signal. When I asked what was so funny, she shot me a grin too quick to reach her eyes. "Just sister stuff, hon." The words stuck like gum on my shoe. I knew this pattern. It had happened before, little jokes that left me on the outside, a sense that I was tolerated, not included. The memory rose uninvited 3 years ago, my birthday dinner. They'd texted me a fake restaurant address, let me sit there 30 minutes before bursting in, laughing about how clueless I looked. I laughed with them, then told myself it was harmless. But the sting never left. Idaho rolled past in long stretches of pine and shadow. The SUV smelled of gas station candy and Emily's new vanilla perfume, too sweet, cloying in the confined space. I tried to start conversations, asked Chloe about her new job, asked Lauren about her PR clients, but they answered with clipped phrases before drifting back into whispers. Even Emily seemed distant, her hand always busy adjusting the radio, her eyes avoiding mine. It felt like a wall had slid up between us during the drive, brick by brick. When we pulled off at the gas station, the place looked like something out of a movie. Harsh fluorescent lights, a single old Chevy pickup parked by the ice freezer. The desert sky bruised purple with rain clouds. I stretched my legs, muttered that I needed coffee and a bathroom. Emily gave a quick nod without looking at me, already fiddling with her phone. I didn't notice her knuckles whitening around the steering wheel. Inside the clerk, a teenager with a name tag that said, Cody, yawned as I paid for coffee. Country music hummed from a dusty speaker. For a second, I felt almost normal. Then I stepped back out into the cold. The SUV idled. The three of them sat poised like actors waiting for a cue. I walked faster, steam curling from the cup in my hand. And then came the lock click, the grin, the words that would split my life in two. "We think you need to stand on your own 2 feet." I watched them speed off gravel, spitting headlights swallowed by the night. My first instinct was to chase them. Coffee splashed onto my sleeve as I ran a few steps yelling Emily's name, but the highway was already emptying them from sight. My lungs burned in the cold air, the futility hitting me harder than the chill. I fumbled for my phone fingers, numb screen fogging in the drizzle, called Emily straight to voicemail. Lauren declined after one ring. Chloe blocked. I tried again, frantic, each attempt swallowed by silence. The sound of tires on wet asphalt was gone. All that remained was buzzing neon and the hollow thud of my pulse. "You okay, man?" The voice startled me. The guy from the Chevy pickup, middle-aged flannel shirt, weather-beaten face, had walked over. He nodded at my phone. "Car trouble." My throat tightened. "My wife. They just drove off." He frowned, glanced at the disappearing highway. "That a joke or something?" "That's what they called it." I forced a laugh that cracked in my chest. "A prank." He shifted uncomfortably, then said, "Doesn't sound like a prank to me." He pointed toward the gas station. "Phone inside still works. Call a cab, get to Boise. You'll figure it out." His tone wasn't pity, more like blunt advice. He gave me a curt nod, climbed back into his truck, and pulled away, taillights fading like Emily's had minutes before. I staggered back into the station, dripping coffee onto the tiles. The clerk, Cody, looked up from his phone. "Need something?" he asked. I asked for the landline. He pushed it over without question. My voice shook as I ordered a cab, wincing at the quoted $50. I hung up and leaned on the counter, staring at the condensation sliding down the cup in my hand. The kid studied me for a beat. "Look, man," he said, lowering his voice. "People don't ditch someone they respect. Whatever's going on, it's not about you being weak. It's about them being cruel." The words hit harder than the coffee had. I nodded, muttered thanks, and sat down on the hard plastic chair by the window. Outside, the rain came heavier, pattering against the glass, blurring the world into streaks of red and white from passing trucks. I watched every pair of headlights, half expecting Emily's SUV to swing back in window, rolling down "Gotcha" on her lips. But none did. Each minute stretched into proof. This wasn't a prank with a punchline. It was a message, a statement about where I stood in her world. I thought of the little things that led here, the way she brushed off my concerns with family first, the inside jokes I was never allowed to share, the birthdays, missed anniversaries forgotten. Each memory pressed against me until the weight was unbearable. I'd wanted so badly to believe that marriage meant partnership, that if I worked hard enough, loved steadily enough, she'd see me as indispensable. But sitting under flickering neon coffee, cooling in my hand, I realized how wrong I'd been. I wasn't indispensable. I was expendable. The cab pulled in, headlights cutting through the rain. I rose, stiff, clutching my phone like a lifeline. As I stepped outside, the cold wind hit me again, sharper now, laced with the scent of wet asphalt and diesel. The driver rolled down the window. "Seattle?" he asked. "Bus station in Boise," I corrected. My voice was steadier than I felt. Sliding into the back seat, I looked once more at the empty road where the SUV had vanished. My marriage was vanishing with it, and somewhere deep down, I already knew there'd be no turning back. As the cab merged onto the highway, neon glow fading behind us, I whispered words only I could hear. "This isn't a prank. This is the truth staring me in the face." And I was finally staring back. I used to think every marriage had hairline fractures you learn to live with, the way an old mug survives with a spiderweb crack down one side. You favor the other side. You pretend the crack is character. And if you hold it just right, it keeps working. On the bus back to Seattle, forehead against cold glass diesel, humming under my feet, I started replaying the years with Emily, scene by scene, and I saw how the crack wasn't a single line at all. It was a network, thin at first, invisible, unless you tilted the cup to the light, then branching, deepening, spreading beneath the glaze, while I swore everything tasted fine. We met 9 years earlier at a tech conference in Portland, the kind of place where lanyards tangle and small talk starts with frameworks. I was giving a lightning talk on performance tuning. She stood in the back, arms crossed, listening with full attention that pierced through the distractions like a spotlight. Afterward, she found me by the coffee urns. "Your bit about memory leaks," she said, "you turned something ugly into something elegant. Compliments are easy to give. Attention isn't." She had both. We talked about green energy software. Her company was building tools for grid optimization, and somehow wound up debating whether good code is closer to poetry or carpentry. She said poetry. I said carpentry. We laughed. She had that way of making a room recede until it felt like a conversation under a desk as kids, a secret language whispered with flashlights. I gave her my card, and she gave me hers, a simple white rectangle with her name centered like a statement, Emily Hart. Our first date was a walk along the waterfront in a surprise sunbreak, paper cups of chowder steaming the cold out of our hands. She asked real questions, not the resume kind. "What's the last thing you fixed that made you proud?" I told her about my brother Ryan's ancient Mustang, a mess of seized bolts and stubborn wiring. "You've got patient hands," she said, and somehow it sounded like love. We fell quickly the way city lights switch on at dusk, one window, then a block, then a skyline. We learned each other's rhythms, my early mornings at the keyboard, her late-night sketching process flows on yellow legal pads, my need to rehearse a thought before saying it, her talent for improvising without a net. The first time I met Lauren and Chloe was at a family dinner, roast chicken candles, a playlist heavy on Fleetwood Mac. Lauren had the polished smile of someone who had practiced in reflective surfaces. Chloe flitted in and out of the kitchen like a moth that hadn't decided whether light was friend or foe. I brought a bottle of Pinot that I'd researched to pair with the food. Lauren raised an eyebrow. "Brought the good stuff to impress us," she teased. I laughed because it seemed harmless, a bit sisterly. Chloe sniffed the glass and announced, "I prefer White Claw." Later, when I told Emily I felt a little hazed, she said, "Relax, they're just tight-knit. Give them time." I did. Time didn't soften them. It calcified their habits. But back then, every slight could be bundled into charm, every awkward moment into a story we'd laugh about later. When Emily proposed a quick courthouse wedding followed by a backyard party, I agreed. It felt like us, no fuss, just substance. We wrote our own vows. Mine were careful, specific promises, the way a dev writes clear interfaces so no one has to guess. Hers were luminous, improvised, a cascade of images about storms and lanterns and staying awake at the same table. In the pictures, I still look the same, tall, slightly uncomfortable in suits, but my eyes are different, looser, trusting. In those early months, we were good. We'd walk to the farmer's market, buy too many peaches, and make a mess trying to preserve summer in jars. We'd code side by side on the couch legs, tangled the TV, murmuring a show neither of us was really watching. She'd presented her startup, and I'd sit in the back feeling proud like a kid watching his parent command a classroom. Then there were the dinners with her sisters, and the way the mood of our home seemed to hinge on their weather. The first Christmas after we married, we spent the afternoon with Lauren and Chloe. I overcooked the ham by 15 minutes, my fault, so the glaze went from glossy to a little burnt. Chloe laughed. "Guess we found the limits of your carpentry," Lauren added. "At least he tried." "You're so lucky, Em. He's useful. Useful is a great thing to be when someone's broken down on the side of the road. It's a hell of a thing to be in your own marriage." I told myself I was being sensitive. "They're just joking," Emily said as we loaded dishes. "They love you." If love was there, it hid behind sarcasm like a nervous kid behind a curtain. The first big crack showed up on our second anniversary. I planned a reservation at a small place we loved. 10 tables, handwritten menu, a chef who spoke to you like a friend. I bought flowers, wrote a note. A half hour before we were supposed to leave, Chloe called Emily, crying. Something about a roommate, a job, a landlord, history's longest string of crises, like a string of firecrackers. Emily pulled on a sweater. "I'll be back in an hour, I swear. Don't cancel the reservation." She didn't come back. I sat in the restaurant alone, napkin folded, watching couples lean in and share forkfuls, the way intimate people do when they forget anyone else is there. The waiter kind set down bread and looked away. When I finally paid and left, the air smelled like wood smoke. Emily came home at 11, exhausted, apologetic. "Family first," she said, and flopped onto the couch. I slept in our bed with her weight denting the mattress into my side and tried to believe first didn't mean instead. On our trip to Hawaii, the one I'd saved for and booked to celebrate getting through a brutal quarter at work, the pattern sharpened. It should have been easy sunwater, a break from Seattle's iron-gray winters. But Lauren and Chloe ended up booking the same week by accident. Lauren took charge the way she did at her PR firm, itineraries, restaurant lists, must-see beaches. On day 2, Emily disappeared with them on a sunrise hike I wasn't told about. "We didn't think you'd want to get up that early," Emily said. Kissed my forehead and offered a bag of malasadas like it was a peace treaty. On day 4, they went snorkeling. "It's a girl's day," Chloe said, already pulling on her rash guard. "You can have a boy's day with yourself." The joke worked better in her head. I rented a beat-up Jeep and drove around the island alone, stopping at turnout after turnout, ocean pounding below. Beautiful things make good company when people don't. The sun burned the tops of my knees. I felt ridiculous and free in equal measure until guilt caught up again like a shadow. Back at the condo, Emily was effusive. "We saw a sea turtle," I told her, about a red dirt road that led to a cliff where the wind hit you so hard it emptied your head. I wish you'd been there, I said. You could have been, she replied, and somehow I was the one who felt scolded. Maybe marriage is a series of decisions about what to ignore. I ignored the birthday prank, the one where they changed the dinner location and left me to smile at a waiter who kept refilling my water because he didn't know what else to do. I ignored the game night where Lauren reset my Wi-Fi and filmed me troubleshooting while they cackled, "Look at the genius." I ignored Chloe's snide commentary when I fixed her sink. Not everything needs a guy to swoop in. When friends raised eyebrows, I became the spin doctor for my own relationship. They're just close, I'd say. Sister culture. Jake, my friend from Cascade, wasn't sold. At our Friday coffees, he'd watch me explain away a fresh slight and ask neutral questions like a good therapist. And how do you feel when that happens? Usually smaller. But I'd learned not to say the words that made the air heavier. My mom was less diplomatic. We had dinner once a month, just the two of us. She'd listen to me talk about new commits and deployment schedules and how Emily's startup was finally getting decent funding. Then she'd ask one question that made the gravy congeal on my plate. Do you feel cherished? It sounded archaic until you tried to answer it. I feel needed, I'd say. Needed for what she'd ask gently. For errands. For stability or for Mark. I'd quote one of Emily's speeches about partnership and compromise. Mom would nod the way you nod when your kid shows you a drawing that's all sky and no ground. Love shouldn't make you small, she'd say, wiping her hands. It should make you more. The irony is, in other ways, I was growing. I took on bigger projects at work, mentored junior devs, shipped code I was proud of. Emily was thriving too, presentations that got applause a seat at more tables. We should have been playing on the same team. Instead, every time I stepped into the light, she tugged me back with a gentle hand. At our wedding, Jake had nudged me afterward. You notice how she pulled you away whenever you were in a deep chat, like she wanted to redirect the spotlight. I'd shrugged. She's just social. The thing about denial is it borrows the best words to justify the worst feelings. The pattern had a soundtrack too. In the car, her playlists were curated by Lauren. At dinner, the jokes were curated by Chloe. At home, our calendar starred other people's emergencies. Emily wore family first, like a rosary, thumbing the beads whenever I questioned a plan that erased us. We didn't scream. We rarely even argued. Our conflicts were quiet like mold behind drywall. Sometimes we'd lie in bed, backs aligned, and I'd debate whether to break the peace. The times I did the script was the same. I am not against your sisters. I want us too. She'd sigh into the pillow. They've been my whole life. You came later. I'd stare at the ceiling fan and count rotations until sleep, telling myself later can still be chosen. The first time I realized Emily could be unkind on purpose came on a Sunday at a friend's BBQ. I was actually having fun talking to someone about open source governance, laughing, feeling present. A rare ease settled over me like a jacket that fit. Emily arrived late from yoga, clocked the scene, and within minutes tugged my elbow. Can you help me carry a thing? She asked. It wasn't heavy. It wasn't urgent. It was, in retrospect, a lever. When we were alone in the kitchen, she leaned on the counter and watched me. You were in your element, she said, tone unreadable. I like you like that. Then why pull me away? I asked, managing a smile. She shrugged. Because I can. She laughed like it was a joke we both understood. Maybe she expected me to laugh too. I did. The next day, the laugh felt like a bruise when something brushed it. Nothing visible, everything tender. Years have a way of collapsing in the rear view. One minute you're promising to keep the lights on together, the next you're trying to find the switch in a house where you don't own any rooms. By the time the Boise wedding invite arrived, the shape of our roles was solid. Emily planned, I facilitated. She chose, I adapted. Lauren and Chloe swirled around every decision like currents you pretended weren't strong enough to pull you off course. On the way to Idaho in that SUV with the vanilla perfume and Lauren's playlist, the air had the familiar texture of a room that will be too loud. I saw an expression pass between the sisters, one I couldn't name then. Like relief maybe, like the moment before a punchline lands. We stopped at an overlook somewhere after Pendleton. The sky went on forever, wheat and gold and a hint of rain way out like a promise. Emily leaned against the railing, hair pulled back in a way that showed the strong line of her jaw. Lauren snapped a candid of us laughing. Later I noticed Emily wasn't looking at me in the photo. She was looking past me at her sisters, Lauren posted it with a caption that sounded sweet until you read it twice. Family first always. Chloe threw up 3 flame emojis and a winking face. I commented a heart because that's what you do when you want the picture to be true. Somewhere past the state line, Emily turned the music down and asked if we could stop soon for a bathroom. She smiled at me, hand grazing my arm. That brush of contact so small still worked on me the way her attention always had. It said, "See me, choose me, don't make a fuss." I thought about the hotel bed, about the possibility of a quiet night, about resetting us in clean sheets. I didn't notice the way she checked the rear view again for confirmation. The gas station appeared like a stage you'd been building in your head without knowing the play. It wasn't until after the window slid down and the words came out, "We think you need to stand on your own 2 feet," that another scene surfaced in cruel detail. The time at her sister's lake house, when they hid my phone and car keys as a game, made me negotiate with mock seriousness to get them back, while everyone sipped wine and filmed my patience cracking. "You're a good sport," Emily had murmured into my shoulder that night. Dangerous praise, as if endurance were the highest form of love. On the bus now, I let the memory and a dozen like it bloom and burst like fireworks seen in reverse color collapsing into single points of light. The old me would have stitched excuses together. They didn't mean it. You misread it. Families are messy. The new me, the one who had watched taillights vanish into rain 2 hours earlier, couldn't get the words "they meant it" out of my head. They meant it as a lesson, as a laugh, as a way to prove something I still didn't fully understand. Maybe that I would always choose them even when they didn't choose me. When Crosby, Stills and Nash came on a fellow passenger's headphones, a soft leak of harmony in the quiet. I remembered Emily's first apartment, the plant she kept alive with the kind of ferocity she rarely extended to people, the way she'd tap a favorite lyric on my knee. We were kind to each other then most of the time, which is part of why the fractures took so long to map. Cruelty is obvious when it hits you with a closed fist. It's harder to name when it shows up as a series of just jokes, just this once, just for now. Denial loves the word just. Somewhere after midnight, as we passed through country that became anonymous in the dark silos sleeping towns, a diner with a single red light on, like a pilot light, I took out my notes app and wrote one sentence: "Boundaries are respect I give myself." It looked dramatic on the screen, like something from a threadbare motivational poster. But my hand stopped shaking after I wrote it. The bus heat clicked on with a metallic sigh. The man across the aisle snored softly. When I woke again, a hint of orange smeared the edge of the sky like someone had dragged a thumb across wet paint. We were an hour from Seattle. My chest felt sore but steady. I replayed my mother's voice. "Do you feel cherished?" The honest answer was a new kind of quiet. I didn't feel cherished by Emily or her sisters. I felt managed, tolerated, sometimes displayed. I had learned how to be useful as penance, how to be dependable as a defense. None of that is love. Or maybe it's someone's definition, but it's not mine. That morning, rolling into the city, I called home. I promised myself I would stop being the guy who laughed along with the joke while something inside me shrank. I didn't yet know what that would require, only that the old script had led to a gas station in Idaho and a cup of cooling coffee under a dying neon sign. If I kept reading from that script, the ending would be cruel and predictable. Love shouldn't humiliate you to teach you a lesson. Family first shouldn't mean husband last. I stared at my reflection in the bus window. Not heroic, not tragic, just tired and awake, and tried the words out in my head like lines for a part I was finally brave enough to play. I can be kind and still say no. I can forgive and still walk away. I deserve to be more than useful. The bus rolled into Seattle at 7 in the morning, gray light filtering through clouds heavy with drizzle. I stepped off, stiff-limbed duffel cutting into my shoulder, the sour smell of diesel clinging to my jacket. The city looked the same as always, pigeons scattering in Pioneer Square, commuters hunched over phones. But I felt like I'd been peeled out of my own skin. I bought a black coffee at the terminal, burned my tongue on the first sip, and told myself the heat meant I was still alive. An Uber dropped me in front of our townhouse, the one Emily had decorated with neutral grays and houseplants that never seemed to wilt. The driveway was empty, no SUV. The blinds were drawn tight. I let myself in with my keys, the lock clicking too loud in the silence. Shoes lined up by the mat, the faint scent of vanilla candles. Everything staged as if for a realtor's showing. It didn't feel like home. It felt like a museum curated by someone who'd already left. Upstairs, the bed was made. Emily's side stripped of the pillow she liked. The sight made me dizzy. I dropped the duffel and sat at the edge of the mattress, head in my hands, until I realized stillness would kill me faster than motion. I needed answers. The laptop was on the dining table lid, half open, screen black. Emily rarely left it behind. I tapped the trackpad. Light flooded the room, and with it came the unraveling. She hadn't even logged out. Browser tabs bloomed across the top: Gmail, Instagram, Slack. One tab labeled Sisters was open to a chat platform I didn't recognize. My throat went dry. I clicked. The chat history scrolled for months. My name threaded through it like a curse. Screenshots of my text, me asking about dinner, me reminding Emily about bills, mocked with crying, laughing emojis. Photos I hadn't known she'd taken me napping on the couch, captioned, Captain Clueless. One message from Lauren weeks before Boise: let's ditch him at a gas station and see how he copes. Chloe, OMG, he's so reliant on M, it'll be hilarious. And Emily, my wife, the person I thought had sworn herself to me. You guys are awful. But yeah, it'd be funny. My hands shook so hard I almost dropped the laptop. I scrolled further. Plans, contingencies, stop near Boise, make him buy coffee, keep engine running. If he gets home first, we'll spin it as a joke. He'll probably call his mom Loel. The cruelty was casual, tossed between emojis and gifs like planning a party. I slammed the laptop shut and paced the kitchen, heart hammering. This wasn't about spontaneity or bad humor. This was months of scheming, deliberate humiliation. I pulled out my phone, snapped photos of the worst messages, then forced myself to breathe. Fight or flight wasn't enough. I had to choose. Staying meant begging for respect from people who treated me like a punchline. Leaving meant stepping into a void I'd never imagined. My legs carried me upstairs. I opened drawers, pulled clothes into a duffel, the sound of zippers ripping through the silence. Every shirt folded felt like a declaration: I will not play the clown again. I paused at the bookshelf. Our wedding album sat there, spine creased from the one time we looked at it together. I flipped through. Emily in her ivory dress, eyes shining. Me beside her, grinning like a man who believed promises were unbreakable. The album blurred. I set it back, closed the cover. That man was gone. By noon, I was in my car. My car left untouched in the garage like a lifeboat. I drove south, rain streaking the windshield wipers, slapping in frantic rhythm. My phone buzzed once, then stopped. Emily. I ignored it. The highway opened ahead, gray water of the Sound flashing through trees. I headed for Tacoma for Ryan. My brother worked late shifts at his shop, but he was home when I knocked duffel slung over my shoulder. He opened the door, grease still under his nails, hair mussed. His eyebrows rose. Jesus, Mark, what happened? He didn't wait for an answer. He grabbed the bag, ushered me in, shoved a mug of coffee into my hands. I sat at his kitchen table and told him everything: the wedding trip, the gas station, the laughter, the chat logs. By the time I finished, his jaw was tight enough to crack teeth. Man, he said, shaking his head, you're better off without her. We didn't talk more that night. We tinkered with his Mustang in the garage instead. The hood propped open, engine exposed, oil smell thick in the air. My hands remembered the rhythm of turning bolts, wiping grease on rags. It felt like proof that I could still fix something, even if it wasn't my marriage. When Ryan cranked the ignition and the engine sputtered alive, he grinned. See, everything broken can be rebuilt. The next morning, I called my boss at Cascade Tech. I asked about the Tacoma project, the one they'd been struggling to staff. He sounded surprised but pleased. You'd be a huge help. Start Wednesday. Just like that, a new track opened under my feet. On Tuesday, my phone exploded. Voicemails, texts, numbers I didn't recognize. Emily. First, Mark. Where are you? This isn't like you. Call me. No apology, no accountability, just panic that I'd flipped the script. I blocked her. Lauren's voice next. You're blowing this out of proportion. It was a joke. Blocked. Chloe. Seriously, grow a sense of humor. Blocked. They tried work phones, burner apps, even email. Each message twisted the knife deeper. Not because I believed them, but because I finally saw how little they believed in me. Thursday night, Ryan came home, shoulders tense. She's outside, he said. I looked out the window. Emily's SUV sat across the street, headlights off, silhouette visible in the driver's seat. My chest tightened. I told Ryan I'd handle it. I crossed the street. She stepped out, hair damp from rain, mascara smudged. Mark, thank God, she said, reaching for my arm. I stepped back. What do you want Emily to talk? To come home? Let's be adults about this. Her voice was soft, almost reasonable. I could see how anyone else might believe her. Talk about what I asked, how you abandoned me 200 miles from home, how you planned it for months. Her expression flickered, mask slipping. Annoyance flared before she caught herself. It was a prank, Mark. You're acting like we broke the law. You humiliated me, I said. You laughed about it. You involved your sisters. Her tone sharpened. You needed it. You're so needy, always hovering. We thought you'd finally grow a spine. The words should have crushed me. Instead, they clarified everything. The marriage I thought I had wasn't real. It was scaffolding built around someone else's control. I shook my head. I'm not coming home. She reached out again, desperate. Don't be dramatic. You can't just walk away over a hurt ego. I stepped back, hit the elevator button to Ryan's building. Watch me. The doors slid closed on her protests. That night I lay awake on Ryan's couch staring at the ceiling fan. The sound of rain against the window was steady, patient, a reminder that the world kept moving no matter who stayed or left. My phone buzzed once more. I turned it face down. In the darkness I whispered words I'd written on the bus. Boundaries are respect I give myself. For the first time in years, I believed them. Ryan's spare room smelled like motor oil and laundry detergent, a blend that reminded me of summer afternoons when we were kids, fixing bikes in the driveway. I slept on a futon, pushed against the wall, the springs creaking every time I turned. Days blurred into a rhythm, mornings at Cascade's Tacoma office, evenings in Ryan's garage, weekends elbow deep in the Mustang's guts. I should have felt broken, but the work steadied me. Each bolt I tightened felt like an anchor, each spark plug replaced like proof I wasn't useless. Ryan didn't prod me for details after that first night. He just handed me tools, poured me coffee, and let silence work. One evening as we leaned over the car, sweat dripping, he finally said, "She tried to rewrite you, man. Don't let her." The words landed heavier than the wrench in my hand. At the office, the Tacoma project gave me something to pour myself into. Long hours debugging code, guiding junior devs, shipping features, things I could control. My manager pulled me aside after a week. "Glad you made the transfer. Team needed your steadiness." Steadiness. A word I'd been mocked for in Boise now felt like a compliment, but Emily wasn't finished. Messages slipped through like water under a door, voicemails from numbers I didn't recognize. "Mark, please, you're overreacting. It was supposed to be funny. Can we just talk?" 7 years doesn't end over one bad night. Once Lauren left a message dripping with disdain. "Grow up. You're embarrassing yourself," Chloe followed with, "Bet you'll come crawling back." I blocked, deleted, but their voices clung to me like smoke. Nights I lay awake, I'd hear the echo, needy, boring, predictable. Then I'd remember the gas station neon, the laughter, the chat logs. Those weren't echoes. They were evidence. The real confrontation came 2 weeks in. Ryan walked into the garage, jaw tight. "She's back," parked outside again. I wiped my hands on a rag, heart steady. This time I didn't feel panic. I felt inevitability. I crossed the lot, rain misting down. Emily leaned against the SUV, hair tucked under a hood, arms crossed. She looked tired, maybe thinner, but her eyes still carried that sharp gleam I'd fallen for years ago. "Mark," she said softly. "Thank God. I've been waiting." I stopped a few feet away. "Why are you here?" She pushed off the car. "To fix this, to bring you home. Look, I know the gas station thing went too far." "Went too far." My voice cut sharper than I intended. "You plotted it for months. You mocked me with your sisters. You left me stranded 200 miles from home." She winced but pressed on. "It was supposed to jolt you out of your rut. You cling, Mark. You hover. We thought I snapped. Your marriage vows didn't include a committee." Her mouth thinned. "Don't twist this. You've always been dependent. I wanted you to stand on your own." I pulled out my phone, opened the photos of the chat logs. Her words lit the screen in ugly clarity. "Let's ditch him at a gas station. He'll probably call his mom, LOL." I held it up. "This is what standing on my own looks like." Being a punchline, her face hardened, mask slipping. They exaggerate. Sisters joke. You're making it into abuse. My voice stayed even. "Because it is." She blinked, caught off guard by my calm. Rain dotted her hood. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "We can reset, Mark. No one has to know. Come home, we'll chalk it up to a mistake." For a second, the old instinct tugged at me, the desire to smooth it over, to be useful, to keep the peace. Her eyes searched mine, still capable of pulling me into that orbit. But behind her I saw Ryan standing in the garage doorway, arms folded, silent witness. I thought of my mother's question. Do you feel cherished? The answer stood before me in flesh and bone. No, I'm not coming home, I said. The words felt like steel leaving a forge, hot but unbreakable. Emily's mouth opened shut. Anger flared. You can't just walk away from 7 years. From me. I stepped back. Watch me. I turned, walked toward the building. Behind me her voice rose raw, now stripped of reason. You'll regret this. You'll be nothing without me. The words rang across the lot, but they slid off like rainwater. I didn't turn around. Inside, Ryan handed me a towel for the rain. Proud of you, he said simply. I sank onto the couch, trembling with release. For years I'd mistaken endurance for love, silence for peace, humiliation for intimacy. Tonight I'd spoken a boundary out loud. The room didn't collapse. The world didn't end. Instead, the air felt wider. The following week, I met with a lawyer named Karen Walsh. Her office smelled faintly of lemon polish. Neat stacks of case files lining the shelves. She listened without flinching as I laid out everything, the gas station, the laptop, the harassment since. When I finished, she tapped her pen thoughtfully. We'll file for divorce, she said. Washington's no fault, but your evidence will help with assets. Do you have screenshots? I slid my phone across. She scrolled, lips tightening. This will be useful. The posts from that night too, Instagram? Yes. I nodded. She smiled, not unkindly. Mark, you've been carrying a story where you're the villain. Let's correct that. For the first time in weeks, I felt something close to hope. As proceedings began, Emily's camp tried to spin. Her lawyer argued I'd abandoned her, that I was emotionally unstable. Karen countered with receipts, months of planning documented in chat, photos of their celebration in Boise captioned "Girls' Night Freedom Vibes." The judge raised an eyebrow. Emily shrank in her seat. When the gavel came down, divorce granted, assets split evenly, my record cleared. I felt a strange lightness, as if gravity had adjusted and I weighed less in the world. Emily tried once more outside the courthouse. Mark, please, we can't end like this. I looked at her, really looked. The woman I'd loved was there, but shrouded in a hunger for control I couldn't unsee. It already ended, I said. Karen touched my arm, guiding me away. No contact, she mouthed. That night I drove alone to Ruston Way, parked by the water. The sound stretched gray and infinite gulls wheeling overhead. I rolled down the window, let the salt air sting. My phone sat silent on the passenger seat. I thought about the gas station neon, about the bus ride, about the line I'd written in Spokane, boundaries, our respect I give myself. I whispered it again, voice steady this time. Rain began to fall, soft at first, then steadier, blurring the city lights. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and for the first time in years, the silence didn't feel like exile. It felt like freedom. The weeks after the divorce felt like stepping out of a storm cellar into a world that looked the same but sounded different. Seattle traffic still honked, the rain still came sideways, coworkers still complained about JIRA tickets, yet everything carried a new resonance. I rented a small, one-bedroom apartment near the water in Tacoma walls, bare floors scuffed. To anyone else, it was a starter space. To me, it was sovereignty. I bought a second-hand couch off Craigslist, a desk from IKEA, and a coffee maker that hissed louder than it should. Each purchase felt like a flag planted my choice, my money, my life. Work thrived. The Tacoma project turned into a proving ground, my calm after chaos setting the pace. I mentored 2 junior devs, patient when they panicked over bugs. Management noticed. Within 3 months, they offered me the role of lead developer. I'd sat in enough meetings watching others lead with ego. I chose to lead with clarity. My team started calling me the anchor. The word that once felt like a chain in Boise became a badge. On weekends, Ryan and I finished the Mustang. We replaced the exhaust, tuned the carburetor, scrubbed decades of grime until the engine gleamed. The first time it roared to life and held steady, Ryan clapped me on the back. See, rebuilt, stronger than before. We took it for a drive down Pacific Avenue, windows down, wind in our faces. For a moment, I wasn't just Mark the abandoned husband. I was Mark the builder, Mark the brother Mark who could take rust and silence and coax it back to motion. Emily still tried now, in subtler ways. Mutual friends mentioned she'd bumped into them and slipped in questions about me. My mother told me Emily had shown up at her door once, spinning a story about me having a crisis, vanishing. Mom had looked her in the eye and said, Mark is steadier than ever. He doesn't need saving. Hearing that broke something open in me, gratitude so sharp it hurt. For years I'd tried to convince people I was fine. Now, someone else was saying it for me. I focused forward. Nights were the hardest, empty apartment silence too heavy, but I learned to fill them. I signed up for a night class in entrepreneurship at the community college. Sitting in a classroom with people 10 years younger scribbling notes about business models, I felt awkward and alive. An idea that had hovered for years began to take shape, a consultancy for app development, small scale, but mine. I called it Thompson Solutions, after my mother's maiden name, a quiet nod to the side of the family that had taught me resilience. At first, it was side gigs, bug fixes for local businesses, a website rebuild for a dentist, an app mock-up for a startup that paid mostly in gratitude. I worked late, fueled by instant noodles and black coffee. Slowly, word spread. Ryan offered to help with logistics, invoicing the parts of work that drained me. Jake, my old coworker, joined for contract projects. We weren't just building software, we were building a life raft that could grow into a ship. 2 months after the divorce, Karen called with updates. Emily was contesting small financial points, but the ruling stood. Karen's investigator had found more Instagram posts the night of Boise. Emily and her sisters clinking glasses at a bar, captioned "Freedom Vibes." Screenshots preserved forever. Karen's tone was brisk but satisfied. They tried to paint you as unstable. The evidence painted them as cruel. You walked away with your dignity intact. Dignity. Another word I hadn't heard attached to me in years. By spring, I moved from the one-bedroom into a modest townhouse overlooking Commencement Bay. Nothing fancy, 2 stories, a narrow deck, a kitchen that finally had counter space. But when I turned the key that first day, a shiver ran through me. This was mine. No shared passwords, no hidden derision in the corners. I furnished it slowly, wooden shelves, plants that might actually survive a dining table where I ate in peace. Friends came by, sat over beers, and said the place felt like me. That was the highest compliment. Not everything was triumphant. There were nights loneliness bit hard when I scrolled through photos of couples on social media and wondered if I'd ever risk again. But instead of collapsing, I treated loneliness as weather, passing, survivable, not a permanent forecast. I filled hours with the guitar I'd abandoned in college, fingers stumbling over chords until songs emerged ragged, but mine. I joined a local hiking group, strangers, at first, later friends who didn't care about my backstory. Each new trail felt like a mile marker away from Idaho. 3 years passed. Thompson Solutions grew from side gigs to steady contracts. We built apps for nonprofits, fixed infrastructure for small companies, even landed a city project. Ryan became operations manager. Jake led dev teams, and I, once the man mocked as predictable, was now responsible for steering an entire company. Some days I still laughed at the absurdity. Other days I let the pride settle in. One evening, Jake and I sat on the deck overlooking the water, beers in hand. "You know," he said, "back at your wedding I saw it. Every time you were shining, she pulled you away, like she couldn't stand you having light without her." He took a sip. "Now look at you. You built a place where your light stays." His words landed like closure. The old me would have argued excused. The new me just nodded. News of Emily trickled in through the grapevine. She'd remarried quickly, a coworker. It ended within a year. Lauren had been fired from her firm after a harassment complaint eerily similar in tone to the way she treated me. Chloe burned bridges with friends after too many lies unraveled. I didn't feel glee, just distance. Their downfall wasn't my triumph. My life was my triumph. Sometimes I'd see them online posting curated lives, filters thick enough to hide cracks. I scrolled past without bitterness. Survival had taught me something better than revenge indifference. I had rebuilt without them, and that was enough. One Saturday morning, sun rare and golden, I drove the Mustang with Ryan down the coast. We stopped at a diner for pancakes, grease and syrup mixing in the air. A kid at the next table stared at the car out the window. Ryan grinned. "Wanna see?" The kid ran outside, eyes wide, as Ryan revved the engine. His father mouthed, "Thank you." The boy's awe reminded me of myself, of fixing, rebuilding, making machines run again, of not giving up just because something cracked. That night I sat at my desk, windows open to the sound of gulls. I pulled out the old notebook I'd carried on the bus from Idaho. The page with my scrawled line, "Boundaries are respect I give myself," was smudged from rain ink, blurred. I traced the words with my finger, then added below, "And respect is the foundation I build on." Looking back, the lessons were brutal but precise. Trust your gut when laughter feels like a knife. Don't excuse patterns that shrink you. Walking away isn't failure. Sometimes it's the only path to growth. Love without respect is performance. Family first is meaningless if it means spouse last, and dignity once reclaimed is the most unshakable asset. I didn't become perfect after Boise. I became aware. Awareness is a heavier gift than innocence, but it's the one that lasts. Every time doubt crept in. Late nights, long days, whispers of old insults. I remembered the neon gas station, the laughter in the car, and the silence afterward. That silence was my classroom. It taught me what to never accept again. Now, standing on my deck at dusk, city lights glittering across the bay, I breathe air that is mine alone. The past doesn't vanish, but it no longer defines. I am Mark, brother, builder, leader, man who walked away. The world didn't end when the SUV disappeared into the Idaho night. My world began.